They did a very low-key, poor traditional marriage. All the villagers laughed at them to scorn, especially the ladies he had asked out. Their marriage became a thing of mockery. In a small village called Koruba, there lived a man named Emma. Emma was a simple farmer. He planted crops and cleared people's farms to survive. His family was so poor that even the poor in the village called them poor. He was the only child of Grandma and Grandpa Obi. In his entire lifetime, all Grandpa Obi had achieved was an old bicycle, which he still rode. It was his pride and joy despite its rusty frame and squeaky pedals. Grandpa Obi was nearly 85 years old, but was very strong and smart. He still went to the farm. He was a very poor man, but always a cheerful old soul. He believed his son wouldn't end up poor like him, even though he didn't know how. Grandpa often sang old folk songs while working, which gave him a reputation as the village's cheerful elder. Some days, Emma would cry looking at their very old house, its cracked walls, its leaking roof, his parents, and the fact that he couldn't do anything to help their situation. The inability to change things at the moment killed him the most. He couldn't even further his education and stopped at high school, but Grandpa would encourage him, "You will be a great man someday. Son, just do what you're doing. Don't stain your hands. Let your conscience be pure and keep working. One day it will be your turn to shine." These words kept Emma going. Each time he felt like giving up, he remembered his father's words and found hope to continue. "Son, you know there's more hope in a living dog than in a dead lion," Grandpa would often say. Emma would answer, "Yes, Papa." Grandpa's voice carried a conviction that always filled Emma's heart with determination. At the age of 28, Emma wanted a wife, but no one wanted him. All the ladies in the village laughed at him. "Can you even pay my bride price? Even if you worked for a whole year, you wouldn't come close," they would say with mocking smiles and whispers that stung like arrows. Some would call him poor and wretched, mocking, "Will you sell your father's old bicycle to pay my bride price?" These taunts became a bitter refrain in his daily life. He couldn't have a girlfriend because no one wanted to date him. One day, while returning from the farm, he met a very beautiful woman from Ogana. She was an orphan, she didn't have friends, and was also the only child of her late parents. She had nothing but an old sewing machine inherited from her late mother. With it, she mended people's clothes to survive, also feeding herself from their small farm. Her sewing machine, though rusty, was her most treasured possession. Though Emma was from a poor home, Ada's case was worse than his. They quickly became friends, as they had both been isolated. Finally, seeing someone they could talk to was a relief. Emma quickly asked Ada to marry him. "I want to see your relatives," he said. But Ada replied, "I don't have any relatives that I know of. It has always been me and my parents before they passed on. I have an elderly couple who live close to my house. They're like my parents. They've really been encouraging. I'll talk to them to stand for me as my parents." "Oh, that's fine," Emma said, nodding with a smile that spoke of his growing affection. So, they did a very low-key, poor traditional marriage. All the villagers laughed at them to scorn, especially the ladies he had asked out. Their marriage became a thing of mockery. People would say, "They can only marry each other. They are perfect. Poverty plus poverty equals abject poverty," and they would laugh, their voices echoing in the dusty village paths. Emma and Ada didn't care. They were happy. Whether people called them names, it didn't bother them. What mattered to them was that they were married and happy with each other. They were always together, going to the farm and market together, often laughing and sharing dreams for the future. Some elderly villagers admired their love, but the young women kept humiliating and mocking them. One sunny day, Emma was weeding his farm as usual. He was working very hard when he encountered a strong tree with very deep roots. He tried to pull the tree out while weeding, but he couldn't. Emma decided to dig around the roots. He dug and dug. His hands blistered, and his shirt soaked with sweat, but it seemed the roots went deeper and deeper. He was tired, but something inside told him to keep digging. So, Emma kept digging. He saw something shining from the roots. He kept digging and found a big, shiny diamond. He quickly covered it with cloth and put it inside his stool bag. Then, he pulled out the tree and ran home, his heart pounding with excitement. Emma ran straight to his father and showed him the diamond. His father's eyes widened in shock and happiness. "Do you know what this is, son?" "It's a diamond," his father said. "But we must not tell anyone. Let it remain within the walls of this house." "Son, do you know what this means? This is a fortune if we sell it." Emma didn't really know the worth of the diamond, but Grandpa did. Grandpa's hands trembled as he held the stone, a symbol of hope for their family. "Very early tomorrow morning, we're going to the city to see my friend Mr. Chie, who's a goldsmith. He will help us check if it's a real diamond or not." "Chie is a good man, and he won't cheat us," Grandpa said. That night, Grandpa called Mr. Kai and explained everything to him. They arranged to meet the next day. Early the next morning, Emma and his father set out for the city. When Mr. Kai saw the diamond, he screamed, "This is worth billions." They all screamed in excitement, their voices filling the small workshop. Mr. Kai said, "I know a very rich man who's into buying and selling pure gold, diamonds, and all manner of precious stones. He'll buy it." That night, Emma and Grandpa Obi stayed in Mr. Kai's house. They spent the night discussing and making plans, their excitement barely contained. The next day, they went to the rich man's house. The rich man was very happy when he saw the diamond. He knew it was a real one, so he bought the diamond quickly and paid them a huge amount of money. Emma and his family became billionaires in one day. With the help of Mr. Kai, they bought a beautiful house in the city. Emma went back to the village to bring his wife and mother to their new home in the city. Ada was sent to a big fashion school in the city. After 1 year and 6 months, she graduated as the best student and started her own fashion house. Many apprentices came to learn from her. Emma also started a furniture business. He had always loved the furniture business, but he never had the money to start it. Now he was very successful at it. One day, Emma's father said to him, "My son, we are old and not used to this city life. We want to go back to our village and live in our house. That's where we belong and that's where we want to be buried. You and your wife can stay in the city, but please, when we join our ancestors, don't abandon the village. Visit the house with your children. Don't isolate it." Emma replied, "I've heard you, Papa, but you're not going back to that old house. Give me 3 months so we can transform the house." The building started, and the villagers were surprised. Nobody knew what was happening. In 3 months, Emma built a beautiful mansion in the village for his parents. When they arrived in the village, they came in a very beautiful jeep. The entire village was in awe. The maidens who had mocked Emma shouted in shock and regret, "Chai, it's not good to write anybody off." They said, "God can change anybody." Emma and his wife spent a week with his parents in the village before returning to the city. They took good care of Grandpa and Grandma, sending them a weekly allowance. His parents never worked again and lived happily. 5 years later, they died peacefully at a good old age. As they had promised, Emma and his family visited the village every year, especially during Christmas. They employed someone to take care of the house in the village. Emma's journey teaches us to never judge anyone by their current situation. Life can humble those who mock and uplift those who persevere. Today's struggles may lead to tomorrow's triumphs if we remain resilient and hopeful. Mockery only reflects a lack of understanding of life's transformative power. Treat everyone with respect because no one's destiny is fixed. Trust that hard work and faith can turn any story around. Thank you for watching my channel. Stay hopeful and keep believing. Once upon a time, 5 young women, all dressed in their NYSC uniforms, were deployed to an African village named Oreo. The village was a wonder. The air smelled of ripe fruits, the trees danced in the breeze, and the hills stood like giant gods watching over the land. The villagers welcomed the corpers with wide smiles, bringing gifts of yam, plantain, and cloth. The corpers felt like queens. The villagers told them, "You're welcome here, but remember, our culture is sacred. Respect our ways and you will live in peace." The king, a wise man with a beard as white as cotton, invited them to his palace. The grand mud palace, decorated with carved patterns of ancestral stories, was the pride of Oreo. He sat on his throne, surrounded by elders, his voice strong like thunder before rain. "My daughters," he said, "this is a land of rules. Obey them and you will be safe. But one thing you must never do: never enter the forbidden forest. That place is not for humans, it is sacred." The courtiers nodded, their faces serious, but as soon as they left the palace, they whispered among themselves. "Do you believe those stories about the forest?" Amara, the leader of the group, asked. Another courtier, Ifioma, rolled her eyes. "It's just to scare us. Every village has tales like this." That night, they were shown their new home, a cozy mud house near the village square. The scent of freshly cut firewood lingered in the air. The villagers treated them like royalty. Food was brought to their doorstep, and the people greeted them with respect. As the moon climbed the sky, the courtiers gathered outside the house, their faces lit by the silver light. They could hear villagers laughing and singing in the distance, the sound blending with the soft chirping of crickets. "This place is beautiful," Amara said, looking around, but deep in her heart, the king's words echoed, "The forbidden forest." What could be so dangerous about a forest? The night passed peacefully, but little did they know, their curiosity would soon lead them down a path they could never return from. The moon was round and bright, hanging in the sky like a golden calabash. The village square buzzed with excitement as people gathered to hear the night tale. The courtiers, dressed in their night wrappers, sat among the villagers, their faces glowing with curiosity. The air was warm, but the stories made their skin tingle, like cold water running down their backs. Nearby, a bonfire crackled softly, sending sparks spiraling into the dark sky. A little girl, no older than 10, stepped forward. Her name was Enim, and her voice was small but strong. "Tonight," she began, "I will tell you about the forbidden forest." The crowd leaned in closer, the courtiers included. Enim's eyes sparkled like stars as she spoke. "The forest is alive.